Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 30th to July 6th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 2 books. First this week we have I'm So Glad We Had This Time Together. This was my original pick for the graphic square on the bingo board for Queer Lit Readathon, but I didn't quite get around to reading this one for that particular square. Listen, we all get distracted from time to time. That means I did start it last month, but I finished it this month. This is quite a hefty graphic memoir, but I really enjoyed myself with it. Even when the end papers are just like this, it's absolutely gorgeous. You know it's going to be an interesting time. Maurice grew up in Toronto and eventually moved to New York for a little bit, but definitely moved back to Toronto. His parents were Dutch immigrants, and I believe he was the youngest of 4 siblings. He's also queer and very artistic, hence a graphic memoir. He's actually an illustrator by trade, that's what he does, so it was interesting to learn about all of these other things that he was doing throughout his life that I'd never heard of, because I'd never heard of his work before. The publisher was like, hey, do you want a copy of this? And I said, yes I do. In essence, this is all about him growing up, learning about himself, coming out, what that looks like, and whether or not he's ever able to find love. And despite not quite finishing it before the end of last month, I'm really glad I did pick it up, and I'm really glad I had my time with it. The other physical book that I finished this week is Thirsty. This one is about a main character who has a drinking problem. You understand this pretty quickly into the narrative. It's very interesting and heartbreaking to see who cares about this and who doesn't care about this and doesn't think it's a problem. Our main character Blake is dating this girl named Ella. They've been dating for 4 years. Ella's family is much more well off than her family, and her best friend's family, Annetta, is also very well off. And they all actually work at the country club where the other 2 girls' parents are members. Through this book we kind of see Blake's strained relationship with the different members of her family for different reasons, and then we also see that she just wants to be the best. She and her best friend and her girlfriend all want to get into this very specific society that exists at the university they're going to be attending in the fall. And to be her best, Blake feels like she has to keep up with the biggest drinker in the room. She has to really impress people in this type of way. And her girlfriend doesn't see a problem with this. She actually eggs her on, but her best friend and other people are starting to tell her that maybe she shouldn't be doing this. We get all of this from Blake's perspective, and things that she goes through are just absolutely heartbreaking. There is so much discussed in this, not only relationships and toxicity and family matters, and also not feeling like your parents fully accept you. One, because he doesn't really accept that you're queer, or at least he's never ever asked you about your 4-year relationship, and then the other seeming to never fully accept the half of you that is black. Not to mention the drinking and all of the terrible things that that can bring out in people. I absolutely flew through this one. It was very difficult to put down. On other shows I watched this week, we ended up watching a couple more episodes from Doctor Who in the 3rd season, and the one that really stuck in my mind from these 3 episodes is one where the Doctor and Martha are stuck in 1913, except for the Doctor isn't really the Doctor anymore. He is now his John Smith persona, and he's fallen in love with the woman who is from Spaced, and also Shaun of the Dead. I saw her first in Shaun of the Dead, and then I watched Spaced, and she's in both of those, because obviously her connection to Simon Pegg and Nick Fury. Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, not Fury. In any case, that was an emotional roller coaster, and I really love that we got to see Sam from Love Actually, because that kid always looks like himself, no matter what age he is. No matter when he grows up and he gets a cowboy hat and a goatee, he still looks like that small tiny child. And no, that's not what he looks like in this, that's what he looks like in The Queen's Gambit. The other show I watched this week is quite an undertaking, because I decided to go right back to the very beginning of Criminal Minds, which came out the year before I personally got a cell phone, and start watching through that, because I've seen a lot of the episodes, especially the earlier episodes, because they would constantly be on television and I would just watch them randomly on cable. But I've never just been all the way through the episodes, and I think it's still ongoing because there's 17 seasons. It says the 17th season is this current year, and then there's also a spin-off series that I will eventually get to once I get through these 17 seasons. Or wherever you're supposed to start that. If somebody knows, let me know. I'm really enjoying being reintroduced to these characters. I have such an affection for them. Is this show perfect? Absolutely not. There are definitely things that the characters do earlier on that I'm like, The way that I remember this character, they would never do that for this reason. That's something that's later revealed. And they do talk very casually about different mental health diagnoses that they shouldn't be talking like that, especially Spencer. Spencer's the big one where when I saw a different episode a week ago, I was visiting family, I was like, he would never say something like that because of something that we find out because of his mother's past, but that's just me. Or it's just the fact that my brain only remembers the really, really good things and doesn't remember that sometimes this show does bad things. So I know that there's definitely a transphobic episode at some point, and I don't actually know enough about specific diagnoses to tell you whether or not the OCD rep in the second episode is pretty on par but then just written up for a show, or if it's absolute trash. I don't know. However, especially with that one, I did enjoy that they pointed out that the person knows what they're doing isn't rational, they just can't help it because it is a compulsion. So even though it's still probably not perfect, it's not the worst I've seen. The one movie we watched this week was Furiosa, and this is a very epic flick. Listen, I saw Mad Max when it came out. I remember kind of the setting and the weird cast of characters with weird names and weird attributes, and just like, these people are fighting, these people go. And this kind of tells you the story specifically through this one character all the way leading up through that, and I actually really enjoyed that because even though I remember very little about Mad Max, I don't even really remember what the Mad Max character was. I really just remember Furiosa from that movie. It was very interesting to see how she grew up and how she got to that point, and just little things along the way that were picked up into the character. I like a good action flick, I like a good fight sequence. This was fun for those reasons. The first audiobook I finished this week is Dead Girls Walking. This is about our protagonist Temple, and her father is a serial killer. This is something she never really wanted to accept, however she knew it was actually happening because she was around the house when he would be doing things she knew he probably shouldn't be doing. She grew up incredibly isolated. It was just her and her dad and her mom, and eventually it was just her and her dad in this shack in the middle of the woods. Now it's years later and she still doesn't know what happened to her mom, and her dad tells her to go back home to figure it out for herself. So she's gone back to these woods to try to possibly dig up her mom's corpse. And the way she's gained access to these woods is actually by being a camp counselor at a horror retreat for Black queer youth. That is an absolutely wild premise, and I absolutely enjoyed it. Most of this cast of characters is Black girls who love horror, and then things go terribly, terribly awry while they're there. We also have the fact that nobody's supposed to know her background, and of course somebody does. And then there's definitely people at this camp that she's had beef with before. So there's all sorts of different history at this camp, and there's all sorts of different history in this specific location because everybody at this camp knows a bunch of killings happened here from a specific serial killer, but nobody knows exactly how close they are to his lineage. Not to mention they're all obsessed with this book that was written by this woman who also used to live on this land. There's definitely a major twist that happens in this, and I don't want to tell you exactly what it was, but I can tell you that when it happened I was like, oh, shit has gotten real. This was steeped in lore and determination and guts and being absolutely in the middle of nowhere and needing to get out of a situation that nobody could have predicted. I highly recommend reading this one. The other audiobook I listened to this week I also highly recommend, and that's Silver Nitrate. This one is set in Mexico in 1993, and it follows primarily two characters. Our first main character, Montserrat, or Momo, depending on who's talking to her, works as a sound engineer for film, which was such an interesting part of this because it really gets deep into what that means, especially in that industry, especially in that time. And she also is a huge horror movie fan, so that definitely plays into this. The other character whose perspective we get occasionally is her best friend from childhood, and his name is Tristan. He is an actor, although he hasn't acted physically in much for about 10 years. He's done a lot of voice work over the last 10 years, but there was a car crash about 10 years ago, and although he only has a tiny scar on his face from that, the tabloids really ran with that situation, and he's only really done voice work since, and he's trying to do other work, but he's not getting any younger. As this plot progresses, we find out that these bisexual besties had these very specific films they loved when they were kids from this very specific director, but he hasn't really done anything since this one project that never actually got finished. didn't get finished because something went wrong with the production and then it was deemed to be cursed. And then one day when Tristan is sorting his mail when he moves into a new apartment, he finds that that director actually lives in the same building as him and he's gotten his mail by mistake, so this is a perfect way to go and meet one of his heroes. From here, the three of them actually become friends, and Montserrat really wants to know more about this cursed film that she never got to see because things aren't going great at her job, and she would actually like to be able to pitch this story as an episode for this kind of weird and creepy show that she knows she has an in at, but she needs more information from him. And eventually he reveals that even though most of the film was destroyed at the time, he actually has a film canister that has one of the scenes that they just never finished dubbing before people in the cast died. And he reveals that there were occult things happening, and one of the people in this scene actually wanted this scene to be completed so that when people saw it, it would actually cast a spell of sorts. And since this production and everybody who ever worked on it has been cursed ever since, he figures that if they finish this scene by just dubbing their voices in, they can stop the curse. Seems simple. Not simple. It goes bad from there. Again, this is just another one that was steeped in lore and occult and borrowing little pieces from here and there, which is definitely what this occult leader was doing. And I am just absolutely obsessed with this book. All the characters were vivid and interesting and had these different motivations as to why they would be doing what they were doing. And although I did not see the ending coming, I'm not especially mad at it. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!